What makes great characters of cinema history iconic? What makes a protagonist be more than just the main central character of a film? Is it wearing a leather duster and an eye patch with a real anti-authoritarian vibe, like Snake Plissken portrayed by Kurt Russell in Escape from New York? Is it a charmingly dim-witted attitude as he peacocks his way through an adventure, like Jack Burton, played by Kurt Russell in Big Trouble in Little China? Or could it be a fanatical devotion to a singular goal that allows him to bring individuals together so that they can overcome their personal challenges to be better than their individual selves and achieve greatness? Like Herb Brooks, portrayed by Kurt Russell in the film Miracle. And while all of those elements are objectively great, especially the appearance of Kurt Russell in your films, it's actually none of those things. The best way, in fact, to craft good protagonists is to make them active members in their story and give them decisions to make. But there are protagonists in films that are in situations that are outside of their control. Think Halloween, think Red Eye, lots of thrillers and horrors in this category. But even in films where protagonists are forced to do things against their will, the way to create a well-rounded and fully formed protagonist is to make them as active as possible. And a way to explain this, how to do this, I'm going to bring up the 2004 film Collateral. You remember the 2004 film Collateral? It was good. So like, share, subscribe, all that. Whatever. Collateral is a 2004 thriller film directed by Michael Mann and written by Stuart Beattie. Now, Michael Mann should need no introduction to anyone who is a fan of thriller or action films, as he has created some of the greatest ones in cinema history. Think Manhunter, Last of the Mohicans, and Heat. Michael Mann is the greatest ever at making thrillers that have explosive set pieces. And Beattie? Well, Collateral is most certainly his best work, but he has been in the industry for a while and has credits on a lot of things. Working on several projects like 30 Days of Night, he wrote the story for Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, The Curse of the Black Pearl, and Australia, G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra, and I, Frankenstein. I'm not saying it again. What am I, a Wikipedia article? Shut up. The film stars Jamie Foxx as Max, a cabbie in Los Angeles, Tom Cruise as Vincent, Max's passenger for the evening and a professional hitman, Mark Ruffalo as Ray, an LAPD narcotics officer, and Jada Pinkett Smith as... What do you mean I have to? She's in the cast.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
Okay, jeez. Will Smith Chris Rock joke. 6 months too late. Good job. She plays Annie, a federal prosecutor. There's a few other members of the cast because, of course there are, but it's my video. It's pretty long anyways, so I'm just gonna get right to it. Now let's talk how to structure a protagonist. And yes, it could be argued, and the billing certainly did, that Tom Cruise is the protagonist of this film. But I say no. He's only top billed because, even after Jamie Foxx won his Academy Award for Ray, Tom Cruise is still Tom fucking Cruise. Like, he is single-handedly keeping the idea of the A-list celebrity actor alive. All thanks to Xenu. Praise be. But Vincent is also not the protagonist because he doesn't go through an emotional journey. He has no character arc. Sure, most of the action done in the movie is directly related to him because he is the driving force of the film. And by most, I do mean all. He is having Jamie Foxx as Max drive him around LA so that he can kill a bunch of people. But the protagonist of a film requires certain characteristics that are not in Vincent. All he has is making the plot move forward. And while most protagonists of most movies generally make the plot go forward, that is not the only thing that is needed. So the protagonist of Collateral is Max. This is because in order to craft a well-written protagonist, you must not only have a story arc for the character, but an emotional arc for the character. And with that, we come to the three key elements that every protagonist needs to create empathy for the character: the want, the need, and the life dream. Let's talk about want. I know I've gone over this previously, but let's give it a little refresher, just for fun. The want of your character is what their goal is. It's related to the main tension of the film, and it has to be something specific. And the answer of the main tension of the film is a yes or no. Will she get X or not? Whether it's a mystical artifact from an ancient past, the ability to leave a summer camp that a maniac wielding a machete calls his hunting grounds, that hot potential romantic partner that your dad doesn't like because his family works at the Coca-Cola company and your family is staunch Pepsi people, or saving the world from a megalomaniac terrorist so you can retire to a lodge and make out with a Russian defector, who is actually also a princess who lives in another universe. Every film in every genre has a protagonist who wants something, and every want in every genre drives the plot. It's the key thing that sets the character on their journey of the film. It's what connects them to the plot. It's essential, and if you don't have a want, you don't have a movie. It is the what of your character's actions, as in what their goals are and what they are willing to do to achieve them. But it isn't the why of the story, or why this story is for this character. And for that, let's go to the need. So the need isn't as tangible as the want, it's not necessarily known to the character, but it is deeply connected to the character's fatal flaw, emotional arc, and theme of the film. The need speaks to the human element of the story. In very basic terms, the need is something that keeps the character from living a fulfilled life. And once they gain it through the course of the film, they feel like they are a more complete person. And while both the want and the need are specific to the character, the need is also something that can be seen as more universal to the human experience. We can't necessarily relate to a dude fighting zombies in a steampunk post-apocalyptic hellscape, but we can relate to that type of character who has shut himself off from the world, having a need to find community and family. It's the crucial element of the character arc and an essential element of the theme, or why the story is being told in the first place. And while the want is connected to the plot, so it's very open and known to the audience, the need is more subtle, and it may not be apparent to the audience until later in the story, although the writer should know exactly what the character's need is from the beginning. And the final element to a protagonist is the life dream. It is the character's hope for the future. Now, this is an essential, it's not a key part, but it is a good addition when you come to having a fully fledged protagonist. Maybe the character is working a 9-to-5 job to save up money to become their own boss. Maybe they hope to survive the war to marry their best gal back in town. You know, World War II movies. Or maybe they're hoping to become the ace reporter at a major news channel. It's very simple, but it's a further way that the audience can emotionally connect to the character. Because, let's be honest, everyone and their mothers has a goal in life that they would like to achieve. At any and every stage of life, there is a hope for the future. So when we as an audience see a protagonist speak super enthusiastically about what they want in the future, we think, that's just like my long-held dream of creating a collective of like-minded individuals to follow the one true prophet, Keanu Reeves. Who said anything about cult? That's gross. I'm just talking about a collectivist utopia where we follow the platonic form of Canadian demigod. You sniff butts, you wouldn't get it. Back to the topic at hand, let's talk about creating a well-rounded protagonist through the lens of Michael Mann's 2004 film, Collateral. So for Collateral, let's start with Life Dream because it's something that's brought up relatively early in the film, even before the main tension starts. Max's dream is to start his very own high-end limo service. He constantly talks about how driving a cab is only temporary, but he's also been driving a cab for 12 years, And as Vincent says,
12 years isn't temporary, Max.
and as much as I don't want to agree with a ruthless hitman who has probably a longer body count than most war criminals, when the dude's got a point, the dude's got a point. But the way the life dream is presented isn't just a cute little detail. It is a key way for the audience to connect with him. In screenwriting textbooks like Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, every film has a moment where the protagonist has to, well, save the cat. It's a shorthand for the protagonist to do something so good that we as an audience immediately emotionally connect with them. The flip side of this, making an audience dislike an antagonist, is an early moment of kicking the dog. But you're not going to sell many books titled Kick the Dog, are you, Blake? So opening up to his passenger by enthusiastically expressing his life dream of opening this limo business and getting into the details of what he wants in it, that could be seen as a Save the Cat moment if you subscribe to Blake Snyder's view of screenwriting. In the arms of... And now we come to Max's want in the film, which is pretty simple. Max endears himself to Vincent by being able to efficiently and quickly navigate Los Angeles to get where he needs to go. Therefore, Vincent decides to hire him for the night. And once Max realizes that Vincent's doing some shit, Max's only want is to get away from Vincent.
Get in the fucking car.
With the proverbial, and sometimes literal, gun to his head, Max is driving Vincent around neighborhoods in Los Angeles, while Vincent takes out various people that he is hired to kill. So the want of getting out of a situation where you're kind of stuck is relatively passive, but the key thing is, the screenplay makes Max as active as he possibly can be. While he doesn't have much agency as to what he is able to do, every sequence gives him a moment where he decides to try to make a break for it. Once Max realizes who Vincent is and what Vincent is doing, Vincent decides to zip tie him to the steering wheel. Max decides to try to get people's attention. It doesn't go well for them, but he tries. When Max finds himself unimpeded from getting Vincent's very important briefcase with all the information of everyone who he's trying to kill on it, Max decides to steal it and run away. And when he's caught, he throws it onto the freeway. And when Max finally has had enough and has been pushed to the brink, Max decides to end his relationship with Vincent in the only way that he can, by removing what makes him useful to Vincent. And he totals the taxi. This, therefore, ends the need for him to be in service of a murdering maniac, like The Decision. It's a nice touch to have Max be so active while being a passive character, as well as the irony of Max being in the driver's seat, but being a passenger in the film. And finally, Max's need is to stand up for himself and take risks. Throughout the film, we learn so much about this character and his worldview. He wants desperately to pursue this business venture of creating a limo service. But he's been driving this cab for 12 years, showing an inability or at least a fear of taking that next step. He even says that he has the ability, he has the means, he could have done it any time. He just didn't because he was afraid. And even though he is driving a cab at nights, he presents himself to his hospitalized mother as a success, or at least does not correct her when she presents him as a success. And it takes the conflict throughout the film with Vincent for Max to get off his ass. We can see the evolution take place in 3 key scenes in the second act before we see the third act and a fully realized Max. The first scene that makes Max's need apparent is the meeting with the jazz guy. This is one of the targets on Vincent's list, and Max just begs, pleads, not to kill him because that's all he thinks he can do. And he just witnesses this high-stakes jazz trivia competition that ends in a way that if Jeopardy ended that way, it would have the highest ratings for a day.
New York, 1945.
Before being canceled. He has no agency. He just pleads for the man's life. Then Vincent forces Max to get the details from his employer after Max decided to throw the briefcase onto the freeway. As there are 2 remaining targets, He was paid for all of them, and he is not going to leave without finishing the job. Not only is this a good example of story structure where actions lead to consequences, this is also a good example of showing that Max, when his back is against the wall, has a bit of a spine. He takes on some of Vincent's characteristics, and he swaggers himself out of a potentially deadly situation. As whenever Javier Bardem looks at you in that way, you have, well, let's say a coin flip's chance of making it out alive. And finally, it's the moment where Max is driving Vincent to his final target. It is immediately after Vincent kills Mark Ruffalo, and in doing so, ends Max's hope of being saved by an external force. Max realizes he has no other choice but to take charge himself. He slams on the gas and he totals his cab in a very cinematic way in order to take control of his life, and most likely saving his life as well. This character arc that Max went through allows him to take charge in the third act and save Annie from Vincent, as he realizes after crashing the cab that Annie is Vincent's final target. He makes quick decisions, he takes charge while running into danger, and he stands up for himself, standing between an emotionless killer and an innocent woman, while ridding the world of a boogeyman that he had been chaperoning throughout the city. At the beginning of the film, we as an audience would not believe Max, as he was portrayed, would be able to stand at the other end of a train and shoot at Vincent through a door at incredible risk to himself. It is through the skill of the screenwriter that this moment is not only believable, but a satisfying conclusion to the film. Also, fun fact, 2 years after this movie was released, Tom Cruise would be famously married to Katie Holmes. And they would be married until 2012, until a very rather public divorce. The whole thing was public. We didn't want to know, we just found out. But here's the thing. 2013 to 2019, Katie Holmes was dating who? Jamie Foxx. So I'd like to think that this clip from the movie, it was the peak moment of cinema for Katie Holmes in her post-divorce time period. I'm not really into celebrity gossip, that's not what I give a shit about, but we all saw that Oprah video, so that's a nice thought. So that's how Collateral is able to be an example of how to create a well-rounded protagonist, especially if said protagonist isn't necessarily in the most active of positions. Just because your character is in a situation that is out of their control does not mean that they have to just be reactive. They have to take charge and do something. Even if that makes them even more stuck in the situation, they have to act, or else it's relatively boring. Okay, it's very boring. And giving your protagonist a clear and well-defined emotional arc is a great way to have the audience emotionally invest with the character. Giving your character a clear want, need, and life dream is a very easy way to get the audience to be on its side, and the fact that Collateral gives these very clear examples of them for Max elevates it higher than most run-of-the-mill thrillers you'll find on Netflix or Redbox or Best Buy or Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or wherever. That video store that they work at in Stranger Things. I don't know. Thanks for watching. It was nice, right? Short and sweet. Yeah, well, this stuff is important. It's how to craft a character. You need to know these things because if you want to write your own screenplay, you need to know how to create a character like this. And if you want to be an engaged audience member watching films, you need to know these things because you can tell when films are falling short and when films are doing it properly. You can't just say, I didn't like the writing, and not have an example. Now you have an example of what to say when you don't like the writing, or when you do like the writing. It's not just dialogue, it's everything. Anyways, thank you very much. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, put it onto a gold DVD and send it out into the universe as like a message to aliens or something. I don't know. Check me out on Venmo. Let's monetize this shit. I'm gonna keep doing this. You're going to keep watching.